So could you just introduce yourself?
I'm Stuart Andrew. I'm the Member of Parliament for Pudsey, Horsforth and Aireborough.
What issues do you think should have been tackled if Parliament were not focused on Brexit?
Well, I mean, obviously Brexit has been a pretty major piece of work that Parliament has to focus on following the decision of the people in the referendum. But I think there's probably a misconception that actually nothing else gets done, and that's not really the case. And I think some of the things that have been of particular note are the fact that we've managed to get, the levels of people who are in work are now at record levels. We've still been able to tackle the issue of youth unemployment, which has halved. We're still looking at things like education, funding the National Health Service with the extra £20 billion. So there's a lot that still goes on in Parliament, although the perception, of course, is very much that it's all about Brexit at the moment.
Being LGBT yourself, can you tell me about the work you do with LGBT Tory?
Yes, well, I mean, I've been a patron of the organisation for some time now. And basically it is a part of the Conservative Party that advocates looking at areas of interest to the LGBT community, making sure that those sorts of issues are being raised at all levels of government. And there are a host of things that LGBT Tory do, which includes lots of action days around the country, but also holding receptions where they invite members of Parliament and ministers along so that they can talk about those issues that are of particular interest to the community. And so it is, the work that they do is invaluable, and I'm very proud of my association with them.
Looking at your voting record, you have generally voted against promoting equality and human rights, while being from an arguably minority group yourself. How can you justify this?
Well, I'd first take issue with that. I mean, a lot of that is on a website called They Work For You, which I don't think accurately reflects how I have voted. I mean, I've been very proud of the fact that I voted for equal marriage. I have voted for paternity and maternity rights. I have voted for a load, all sorts of issues on equality. It is at the heart of who I am. It would be somewhat ironic for me as a gay man not to vote for equality issues, and I've stood up in Parliament on many occasions advocating those. What often happens, of course, is there have been certain debates, for example, looking at the human rights directives and the Human Rights Act. And of course, what we're saying is that we need to wait until we have enacted Brexit before we look at that, because actually it's an association of our membership with the EU. But I would advocate very much that I will be pushing for us to, if anything, build on the work that we've done, make sure that equality remains an issue of high importance to the government, and advocate for that in Parliament.
With regard to your constituents, how do you make sure that their views are represented in Parliament as well as your own?
So it's always a balancing act. It's quite hard. I'm elected as a representative of this constituency, so I will have my own personal views and will obviously advocate those. But at the same time, I make sure that I go out into the constituency, hold public surgeries where people can come along and just have a chat and give me their views. Equally, people write emails to me, contact me on social media, and I do formulate all of those views and actually represent those to government ministers to try and make sure that people's thoughts, concerns and issues are raised at the highest level. Now, sometimes that's very difficult, because if you look at the area of Brexit, for example, there are a whole host of views that people have on that issue, and trying to make sure that you find a balance is obviously sometimes quite tricky. But I will always, even if I don't agree with the issue, I will write to the minister to say that my constituent has a view on X, and ask for that to be looked at and considered.
What's your take on the recent reclassification of cannabis for the treatment of conditions such as epilepsy?
So there's been obviously a long debate about this. I think, you know, the premise still is that there is a lot of concern that recreational use of cannabis can lead to some significant side effects. But what we've been looking at here is how actually the benefits of the sort of medicinal cannabis can help people who are particularly suffering from certain conditions. This is going to be looked at very closely in terms of who will be able to get it, has to apply, and a very vigorous process will have to be enacted before they will be prescribed it. But it's clear that for some people it really has worked. So I'm glad that we're taking this sort of incremental approach. And equally, medical bodies will have been tasked by government to do a wider review on the use of cannabis, so that we can, you know, where there are clearly tangible benefits for people who are suffering from various conditions, that they can get the benefits of that. But you know, in terms of government policy, it is very much to ensure that public safety is the highest priority.
And is there anything that you would like to add about anything that's going on in politics right now?
Well, I mean, this is a very challenging time to be in politics. You know, there are very strong views, particularly on the issue of Brexit. But I think my role and the role of every other MP is to continue to advocate for their constituency. And so there are some serious issues that we're still addressing here, things like the preservation of our green belt, which is you know, certain areas are under threat because of the council's local plan. There's looking at things like trying to get the ring road upgraded so that it's safer and less congested, but also making sure that we're not wasting resources on things like the proposed link road to the airport. So there's a lot going on in the constituency that keeps me busy, as well as all the work that I do in Parliament.